You might think it's just fiction, but really, are the tombs of pharaohs cursed to those who discover or desecrate them? All we know is that some of these tombs have ancient inscriptions that are supposed to do just that. We will attempt to explain this phenomenon in today's video. So be warned when next you visit a tomb exhibit in Egypt or at a museum, because its curses still stand. Is the mummy's curse a real thing? By definition, the curse of the pharaohs, aka mummy's curse, is believed to avenge anyone who desecrates the mummy of a pharaoh. This curse is said to bring about misfortune, sickness, or even death, without distinguishing between thieves and archaeologists. We could even include museum goers and tourists into that mix. But here comes the bummer, because over time, various authors and documentaries have argued that the curse has scientifically explainable causes, such as bacteria or radiation. But that simply doesn't explain away the mystery entirely. The origins of these Egyptian mummy curse tales can be traced back to European cultures and have undergone changes from being perceived as magic to being explained by science. Furthermore, they have transitioned from condemning the disturbance of the deceased to entertaining horror film audiences. This evolution suggests that Egyptian curses have become a cultural phenomenon that we have come to accept and can't do away with. There are indeed rare instances of authentic ancient curses found within or on the facade of tombs. The curse on the tomb of the mastaba of Kentika Ikeki from the 6th dynasty in Saqqara is especially directed at the Ka priests who oversaw burial rites, and its aim was to safeguard the tomb's integrity and maintain its ritual purity, rather than serve as a warning to potential robbers. Although it ultimately came to serve that purpose too, as a deterrent in the minds of these would-be looters. Stories of such curses date back to the 19th century, but their prevalence increased significantly following Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. Despite the absence of specific inscriptions in this particular pharaoh's tomb, popular beliefs have always associated the tomb with a curse. The evidence supporting curses related to Tutankhamun is considered scarce, yet the legend persists to this day, and by all accounts it remains quite the legend. So we're talking about tomb curses here. Don't be disappointed that curses associated with tombs are exceedingly rare, and this fact has more to do with the people who were supposed to inscribe it. Historically, the likelihood that such tombs would be desecrated was unthinkable, so burial rites didn't necessarily include curses for a future generation of potential looters. Such acts were sacrilegious, and who in their right mind would dare to do so? Perhaps those ancient guys were naive. The more reason to include the curses, if you ask me. However, a few tombs included curses for the sake of it, like one that said, "Any ruler who commits evil or wickedness towards this coffin, may Hemen refuse any offerings they present, and may their heir be deprived of inheritance." Hemen was a local deity. Another good example is one from the tomb of a 6th dynasty figure that reads, "Regarding all individuals who enter my tomb, impure, they will face judgment. Their fate shall come to an end. I will seize them like a bird by their neck. I will instill fear of myself within them." You'd agree that was some scary stuff if you consider the aftermath of such curses in popular media. If you're not yet convinced, here's one good example of a more severe curse. Those who disturb the eternal rest of a pharaoh shall be cursed. Those who break the seal of this tomb will be afflicted by an incurable disease that no physician can diagnose. But have these curses come true in modern times? Hieroglyphs are supposed to be the language these curses were originally written, and an understanding of such texts only began in the early 19th century. So you couldn't blame anyone for thinking curses arose from the manhandling of mummies and artifacts obtained from tombs. For instance, in 1699, Louis Penneker documented an incident in which a Polish traveler purchased and transported 2 mummies aboard a ship. The travelers on board the ship said they experienced recurring apparitions of 2 ghosts, and it wasn't until the mummies were thrown overboard that the storm ceased. The renowned archaeologist Zahi Hawass, recalling his days as a young archaeologist excavating at Komabubilo, had to transport several artifacts from a Greco-Roman site. On that same day, his cousin passed away, followed by the death of his uncle on the 1st anniversary, and eventually his aunt on the 3rd anniversary. Years later, during his excavation of the tombs of the pyramid builders at Giza, he encountered a curse that stated, "Anyone who enters this tomb with ill intent and seeks to destroy it will be faced with the wrath of crocodiles in water and snakes on land. The hippopotamus shall be their adversary in water and the scorpion on land." Despite not being superstitious, Hawass made the decision not to disturb the mummies. However, he was soon also involved in transporting 2 child mummies to a museum, and he reported being haunted by the children in his dreams. This continued until the mummy of their father was reunited with the children at the museum. As a result, he concluded that mummies should not be displayed. Whereas, on the flip side, Hawass also documented an incident involving a sick young boy who had a deep fascination with ancient Egypt and experienced a miraculous recovery when he gazed into the eyes of King Ahmose I's mummy at the Egyptian Museum. So in short, mummies were just as benevolent as they were vengeful. Furthermore, mummies could be revived from the dead, and believe it or not, the concept first originated in a fictional story titled The Mummy, or A Tale of the 22nd Century, which was written by a certain Jane C. Landon in 1827. Its main selling proposition was that it was a blend of science fiction and horror, and it especially played a significant role in shaping the mummy curse narratives. Likewise, there was the notion that in 1869 the writer Louisa May Alcott was possibly the first to employ a fully developed cursed mummy plot in a largely forgotten story from a bygone era that suddenly resurfaced in the late 1990s. It turned out there were countless other stories like The Mummy's Soul and After 3,000 Years. In these stories, a female mummy would usually exact magical revenge upon her male violator. And if you're really paying attention, you'd observe that these stories tied the sins of rape and tomb desecration into one as something women in general could identify with. And furthermore, these stories were mostly written by women. Apparently, women are more likely to scream at a movie theater. Does that suggest something about the inspiration behind the cursed mummy narrative? Whatever the case, for the longest time while growing up, we always felt Egyptian mummies and the mummies who gave us life were one and the same. Please don't feel embarrassed. We were all kids once and can relate. But then we grew older, saw mummies wrapped all over in off-white linen, and immediately got it. Our moms are definitely not that scary. In that same vein, we on this channel are not out to scare you on purpose unless you refuse to hit the subscribe button. But then, someone dared to open Tutankhamun's tomb. On November 29, 1922, an archaeologist named Howard Carter led a team that successfully opened the tomb of Tutankhamun, thus marking a significant milestone in the modern era of Egyptology. Strange occurrences quickly followed, and the belief in a curse associated with the tomb gained widespread attention following a series of deaths among Carter's team and other prominent individuals who had visited the Tutankhamun tomb shortly after that. One of the renowned Egyptologists, James Henry Breasted, collaborated with Carter soon after the initial opening of the tomb. Breasted recounted an incident when Carter sent a messenger to his house who claimed to hear a faint, almost human cry upon approaching the entrance. To their surprise, they discovered a cobra occupying Carter's birdcage. Cobras are a symbol of the Egyptian monarchy. The cobra killed the canary inside the cage, fueling local rumors of a curse. Arthur Viagal, a former Inspector General of Antiquities to the Egyptian government, interpreted this event as the royal cobra breaking into Carter's house on the same day the king's tomb was being accessed, almost like a tit-for-tat. The incident was also reported in the New York Times on December 22, 1922. Moreover, the first casualty related to these events was Lord Carnarvon, who just so happened to be the financial backer of the excavation. He passed away on April 5, 1923, approximately 4 months and 7 days after the tomb's opening. A mosquito had bitten Carnarvon, and he accidentally worsened the bite while shaving, leading to an infection that resulted in blood poisoning. 2 weeks before Carnarvon's death, Marie Corelli wrote a fictional letter published in the New York World magazine, quoting an obscure book that confidently predicted dire consequences for those who disturbed a sealed tomb. As expected, this triggered a media frenzy, falsely claiming that a curse had been found within the king's tomb. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, known for the Sherlock Holmes franchise and lesser known as a spiritualist, put forth the notion that Lord Carnarvon's death resulted from elementals created by Tutankhamun's priests to protect the royal tomb. This idea further intensified media interest in the alleged curse. Arthur Weigall reported that 6 weeks prior to Carnarvon's demise, he had witnessed the Earl making light and fooling around before entering the king's tomb. Weigall had then remarked to a nearby reporter that he believed Carnarvon had only 6 weeks to live. To further deepen this mystery, Dr. Derry's first autopsy on Tutankhamun's body revealed a healed lesion on the left cheek of the mummy. And remember, Carnarvon was shaving when he got infected. So was there a link in there somewhere? Sadly, Carnarvon had been buried 6 months before this discovery, so this theory could not be verified. It would have been great to know that both cuts matched. Otherwise, an investigation conducted later on, which was based on academic sources, concluded that it was unlikely that Carnarvon's death had any connection to Tutankhamun's tomb. To add more intrigue to the whole affair, another conflicting theory suggested that exposure to mycotoxins in nearby toxic fungi had contributed to his demise. The report highlighted that several individuals, including Carnarvon, had entered the tomb on multiple occasions, and none had been affected. Earl Carnarvon had, in fact, been diagnosed with pneumonia and ultimately died of multi-organ failure. The Earl had been susceptible to frequent and severe lung infections and had a prior history of such ailments. So even a single acute episode of bronchitis could have been the last straw that broke the camel's back. As such, Carnarvon's immune system was easily overwhelmed by the infection when it came to the fore. Or rather, maybe his involvement with the tomb by way of the curse hastened things up. We may never know. Here's another bizarre accident. In 1925, anthropologist Henry Field visited the tomb accompanied by James Henry Breasted, mentioned earlier. Field recalled Carter's kindness and amicability as the chief archaeologist on the project. He also mentioned a peculiar incident involving a paperweight gifted to Sir Bruce Ingram by Carter. The paperweight consisted of a mummified hand with a scarab bracelet bearing the inscription, "Cursed be he who moves my body. To him shall come fire, water, and pestilence." Shortly after receiving this gift, Ingram's house burned down, and when it was rebuilt, it was hit by a flood. Surely that was proof enough for all to see that the tomb was indeed cursed. Howard Carter himself was entirely skeptical of such curses, dismissing them as baseless. He regarded the approach to the work of Egyptologists at large, including himself, as one of respect and awe, in direct contrast to such foolish superstitions. In May 1926, he recorded the sighting of a jackal resembling Anubis in his diary. It was the first time ever in over 35 years of working in the desert that Carter would permit himself to be sentimental about such things. However, Carter did not attribute this occurrence to supernatural causes. More deaths popularly attributed to Tutankhamun's curse. You can always trust certain critics to raise some doubts by highlighting that many individuals who either visited or participated in the tomb's discovery had long and healthy lives. Now, according to a study, out of the 58 people present during the opening of the tomb and sarcophagus, only 8 passed away within 12 years. Remarkably, the remaining individuals, including Howard Carter, who eventually succumbed to lymphoma at the age of 64 in 1939, were still alive. Noteworthy survivors from this group include Lady Evelyn Herbert, the daughter of Lord Carnarvon, who entered the tomb shortly after its discovery in November 1922, and lived for an additional 57 years until her death in 1980. Another survivor was J.O. Kinnaman, an American archaeologist, who passed away in 1961, 39 years after the event. But these facts are in no way an exemption from the curse, and perhaps it was selective in the same manner gazing at a mummy healed the sick Egyptian boy from earlier, much like Santa's naughty and nice list. As such, everyone is better off not dismissing any such consequences as random and freak occurrences. For instance, George J. Gould I, born on February 6, 1864, was an American railroad executive and financier. He was the son of Jay Gould, a prominent industrialist and railroad magnate. George J. Gould inherited a substantial fortune and became actively involved in his father's business ventures. In 1922, Gould embarked on a fateful trip to Egypt, where he had the opportunity to visit the recently discovered tomb of Tutankhamun. The tomb's treasures and ancient artifacts captivated the world, not least Gould, who was among the privileged few to witness this remarkable archaeological find firsthand. However, shortly after his visit to the Tutankhamun tomb, Gould's health took a turn for the worse. He fell ill with a fever while staying on the French Riviera. Unfortunately, despite medical efforts to treat his condition, Gould's health deteriorated, and he passed away on May 16, 1923. This was barely 6 months after seeing the innards of the tomb. The exact cause of Gould's illness and subsequent death was not explicitly mentioned, but we can at least hazard a guess, and it has quite a bit to do with Tut's curse. Furthermore, A.C. Mace, a member of Howard Carter's excavation team, tragically passed away in April 1928, which is 6 years after helping to uncover the tomb. Mace had been heavily involved in the exploration of Tutankhamun's tomb, and his death was shrouded in mystery as he reportedly suffered from pleurisy and pneumonia. If you don't know already, those are lung-related diseases. Doctors at the time tried to clarify that pleurisy and pneumonia are medical conditions that can arise from various causes, including bacterial or viral infections, rather than being exclusively associated with curses or supernatural forces. And so there was a lot of speculation about whether the curse of the tomb was responsible for his untimely demise. Many observers at the time admitted that Mace's passing occurred within the realm of the tomb's influence. Still, with more advanced scientific practices breathing down the necks of these theorists, it became relatively challenging to attribute his specific cause of death to supernatural factors. However, the notion of a curse associated with Tutankhamun's tomb remained alive thanks to the other documented misfortunes that resulted from its perceived desecration. And honestly speaking, popular media played a big part in hyping the narrative even more. What of Captain Richard Bethel, who served as Howard Carter's secretary during the excavation of Tutankhamun's tomb? Apparently, he met a mysterious fate on the 15th of November 1929. According to the maths, this was 7 full years to the day, give and take a margin of 6 days. Bethel's death occurred at a Mayfair club under suspicious circumstances, as it was found that he had been smothered on purpose as he lay in his bed. So the question arises as to how his demise could be linked to the curse associated with the opening of the tomb. Perhaps his killers wanted the curse to be real so bad that they created the impression that Bethel could not escape his fate and must die by whatever means. In this same context, Bethel's untimely death raised concerns about a potential connection to the curse and the extent people would go to in order to exact their own version of supernatural justice. Or maybe they were doing it for the sake of popularity and the mystery of intrigue. And it worked somewhat because the notion of a curse invoked by the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb remained a subject of debate and skepticism long afterward. And this was irrespective of the fact that, by all accounts, Bethel's death seemed like foul play. And this subsequently sparked a great deal of speculation and doubts about the cursed tomb theory. And finally, there's the big fish himself, Howard Carter. He was the same renowned Egyptologist who achieved worldwide fame for discovering and opening Tutankhamun's tomb on the 16th of February 1923. He undoubtedly led a life intertwined with mystery and speculation. The circumstances surrounding his death, 16 years after the tomb's unveiling, continue to be associated with the infamous curse that supposedly plagued those who disturbed the pharaoh's resting place. Following the highly publicized opening of Tutankhamun's tomb, rumors of a curse quickly spread, fueled by the deaths and misfortunes that befell some individuals associated with the expedition. Carter himself was not immune to the tragedies that seemed to accompany the tomb's discovery. Howard Carter lived a life characterized by a passionate pursuit of Egyptology and archaeological discoveries. Despite his immense success and contributions to the field, he faced personal and professional challenges. The British government never recognized him for his feat. After the exhilarating discovery of the tomb, Carter dedicated years to meticulously documenting and preserving its treasures. It is said that it took him 10 full years to catalog every item and artifact retrieved from Tut's tomb. However, his career faced setbacks, and his efforts to secure permanent funding for further excavations were met with obstacles. On March 2, 1939, 16 years after the tomb's opening, Carter passed away in his London home. His death sparked speculation about the potential influence of the alleged curse. According to some accounts, when Carter's body was being prepared for burial, a power outage occurred in the vicinity, further adding to the mystique surrounding his passing. However, Carter had a history of health issues, including lymphoma and arteriosclerosis. That is, his immune system was failing, and his blood arteries were clogged with cholesterol, all of which could have contributed to his decline in health and eventual demise. Furthermore, he had been a heavy smoker, which likely also impacted his health and well-being. So it is safe to say the association between Carter's death and the curse of Tutankhamun's tomb is barely provable. And yet, it doesn't stop us from believing in the power of curses to wreak havoc. So we, or anyone else for that matter, would be wise not to go asking for trouble in this particular way, even if all we did was stare at such exhibits in a museum. Ultimately, Howard Carter's life and death gave us something to think about with regard to the tomb and its attendant curse. A correlation could be deduced between his being the chief archaeologist and how his life and career turned out. While his pivotal role in the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb brought him fame, the notion that his demise was a direct result of the tomb's curse still holds true. At least his life didn't get any better with the discovery of the tomb, but rather got worse. Some might argue that Carter's own health issues and lifestyle choices offer a more plausible explanation. Whatever the case, the legacy he left behind in the field of Egyptology far surpasses the mysterious connections attributed to his death, or even the curse that followed. Ultimately, the concept of the curse of the tomb remains a topic of debate among historians, archaeologists, and even regular people like you and me. Some dismiss it as mere coincidence or superstition, while others acknowledge the psychological impact and cultural significance surrounding the belief in curses. Whether you admit it or not, curses are real, but if you take time to press our usual YouTube buttons, you'd be on our safe list and become immune to them, and not even Tut's curse can get to you. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you found this content valuable. Click here to watch another video that truly is a mystery, and we'll see you in the next one.